Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Sharon Oyella and today we are crocheting a miniature bear. This little guy here was designed specifically for another pattern. This is a free pattern on my blog as well. It's called the Floating Honey Pot. So I designed this little Pooh Bear to fit inside that floating honey pot. So this video that you're watching is a very long video. It's going to take you through every row of this little pattern here. If you've never crocheted before, then it'll be a good video for you to watch. If you've crocheted before and you don't need video help, then you will pick up the written pattern. This is for free. This is on my blog. That link is popping up here in the iCard. You don't need to click that right now. On the written pattern, you're going to find out more about this bear, about the different yarns that I used, and the hook size. I also explain the supplies list, abbreviation chart. I also tell you how to read the rows. Very important because my patterns are written out a little bit differently than most. Very simplified. This is a very detailed pattern and it has an assembly section as well. If you've never crocheted before, I would still suggest printing this off and reading along the written pattern as we go through the video, because that will help you in future patterns of mine. These guys were all crocheted using the same pattern, the same weight yarn, but a different brand. So these two guys here were made with one brand of yarn, and this little one here was made with a different brand of yarn. It's an ultra soft yarn, and look at the difference in size. Same hook for all three. So let's get into that supplies list. I'm going to show you the yarns that I used for all three of these bears. Both of these guys right here were crocheted with Red Heart Comfort yarn. It's a worsted weight yarn. It's a great yarn for amigurumi. That's a lot of yarn in this yarn ball. If you're not a regular amigurumi maker, then probably not the best yarn to choose, but that's what I use for these guys. And this little one here, same pattern and same hook. It's also a worsted weight yarn, but a different brand. It's called Bernat Premium. It's an ultra soft yarn. Look at the difference in size. So like I said, the bears were designed for this honey pot that I have for free on my blog. And this honey pot was made with Red Heart Comfort yarn as well. So this bear is the perfect size to fit in here. And this little guy here, he's got room to spare. So depending on what yarn you choose will determine the size of bear that you end up getting. Bears were all crocheted using the same hook. This is an F. It's a 3.75 millimeter hook. And if you use the Red Heart Comfort yarn, you're going to get a bear about 5 inches tall, just a little bit less than 5 inches tall. For colors, I do note them in the written pattern. You're going to choose 2 different colors for the bear, one for the sweater, one for the bear itself, and then a strand of black yarn for the nose and the eyes. You can also use embroidery thread for the nose and the eyes. A couple of stick pins will come in handy for sewing. I used a blunt end yarn needle for most of the sewing. To do the eyes, I found a sharper end needle, like this one here. Did a better job of getting the yarn where I wanted it to go. So if you have both of these on hand, that would be great for this pattern. A pair of scissors, of course, and a very soft and springy polyester stuffing. On the package of mine it says ideal for toys and pillows. You want to be able to sew through that stuffing without getting clumps in your finished amigurumi. So soft and springy polyester stuffing is the best. Alright guys, let's get started. We're going to grab our crochet hooks and our yarn. We're starting with the head first. Alright my friends, we are making our bear head first. And we start at the tip of the nose, but we don't use black. That black is put on after the head's already done. So whatever color bear you're making, I'm making this guy on film. If you're making little Pooh Bear here, then you're going to be using yellow. And we start at the tip of the nose. And row 1 is a loop with 6 single crochet stitches, and we're going to do that together. So you're going to grab your crochet hook, the color that you're using for your bear, and let's start with row 1. So let's make our loop with 6 single crochets, and this is one way of getting this loop. There's also another method, and I now have a new tutorial here on YouTube that will show you how to get the same loop but doing it a different way, and that link is popping up here in the iCard. So watch this way I do it now, and if it doesn't work for you, then you can go ahead and watch that other video. Okay, I'm going to take the shorter yarn tail, I'm going to wrap it around these two fingers twice. 1, 2. Hold the shorter yarn tail in between my pinky and my thumb, and now the working yarn in between my pinky and my thumb. I'm making a slip knot. I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to go to the back. I'm going to grab this yarn here and pull it underneath these two strings. Pull it underneath. Now I'm going to grab that yarn one more time and pull it underneath the loop that's on my hook. And my slip knot has been made, so now I can take it off my fingers and get ready to crochet on. I'm going to put 6 single crochets into this ring. Then I'm going to go through the ring and grab that yarn and pull it through the ring. So going through, grab the yarn and pull it through the ring. And now I have 2 loops on my hook. Yarn over and pull through those 2 loops on my hook. And there was my first single crochet. I'm going to repeat that 5 more times. Going through, grab the yarn and pull it through. I have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. And there was my second single crochet. And my third, fourth, fifth, and last time, 6. I put 6 single crochets into that ring, and now they're called stitches, and you can see the V's of each stitch going down. There should be 6 of these. Now I need to close up the ring. Before I do that, I'm going to reach in here and grab this starting yarn tail and pull it out from in between those 2 strings so it doesn't get tangled up. I'm going to hold that slip knot between my finger and my thumb, and I'm going to pull on one of these 2 strings to close up the ring. That one doesn't do it, so I know it's the next one. Pulling up until that ring is closed. Now I need to get rid of this ring, so I'm going to pull on the starting yarn tail. And there we go, there's row 1 with 6 single crochets. Now remember, if that method doesn't work for you, then you can try out the second method that I have here on YouTube. And again, you can pop up here, look in the iCard, and the link is there for you. Alright, so now we can count these stitches. Pull out your last one so you don't lose it. And one of the stitches is right underneath this big loop. And it's the V. And there's 6 of these going around. And the last one's right here, in front of the starting yarn tail. Each stitch has 2 loops in it, so when you go through, make sure you're going through both loops every time. And you're going to be putting your hook right underneath those loops. And there's my 2 loops of my stitch. So row 2 is 1 single crochet in the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then 2 single crochets into that last stitch. And we're going to do this whole row together. So when I go through, I'm going to make sure I'm going through both loops of that stitch, grab my yarn and pull it through. And there was a single crochet in the first. I'm going to go into the second stitch now. And there was 2. 1 into the third. One single crochet into the fourth. One single crochet into the fifth. And now we're working in the last stitch of the row. It's right here. We're going to put 2 single crochets into that last stitch. This is number 6. There's 1, and going back in the same stitch. A little bit hard to see now. Just make sure you're getting in the right one. And there's 2. And we're finished row 2, and now we have 7 stitches around. We are going to flip this the right side because it's actually turning inside out. So we have to stop and pull out our last stitch so we don't lose it. And where that starting yarn tail is coming out of, I'm going to push that inward. You can use your hook too if you need to. Just use the back end of your hook and push that until you turn it right side. Now we can crochet on Moving on to row 3, 1 single crochet in the next 6 stitches, and then 2 single crochets into that final stitch of the row. And we're going to do this one together. Don't worry about the starting yarn tail, we're going to cut that up a bit shorter at the end of this row. So if you can't see your stitch that you're supposed to be working in, just turn it towards you and you can see the top of the stitch and the V there. So that's the first one we're going to get into. And we're going to go underneath those 2 strings of the V. There's our first single crochet. Going into the second stitch of the row, make sure you're not going back in the same one you just worked. There's 2. Three. 4. 5. 6. And now we're going to put 2 single crochets into the final stitch of the row. That's number 7. We're going to put our first one and go back in the same stitch hole you were just in and put our second single crochet. And we've just increased the row again by 1 stitch, so now we have 8 stitches around. Now we're going to cut up that starting yarn tail a bit shorter, and we're going to tuck it into the tip. You never want to cut a starting yarn tail up too short because it could work free and then you'd end up with a hole in your stuffy. So I'm just going to push that down here. And now I'm going to add a marker as well, and I always use a piece of yarn of a different color. Be aware if you use the same thing as a stitch marker, it can get pulled out along the way and then you'll lose your spot. So I just go into that last stitch I just put in. I'll lay the yarn over the hook and pull 1 strand through and leave the other one hanging. And I'm going to move this marker at the end of every row. So we just marked off the last stitch of the row. So now we have 8 stitches around. In the next row we're going to increase the row by 4 stitches. Row 4 is 2 single crochets in the first 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1 single crochet in the last 4 stitches of the row. So let's do it together. 2 single crochets in the first 4 stitches. 1, going back in the same stitch hole, and 2. Now in the second stitch, 2 single crochets. In the third stitch, 2 single crochets. And now into the fourth, 2 single crochets. And now 1 single crochet in the last 4 stitches of the row. 1, 2, 3, and the fourth is going to land on the marker, so I'll pull it out, and 4. And that's the end of row 4, and now we have 12 stitches around. We're going to move that marker. Let's do row 5 together. 2 single crochets in the next 6 stitches, and then 1 single crochet in the final 6 stitches of the row. Now if you were crocheting by yourself and not watching this video, and you have a little bit of trouble with getting distracted, you can mark off those 6 stitches that we're supposed to be working in. So let's do that. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we know when we land on that first marker we should be putting in 2 single crochets. That just makes it a little bit easier and you don't have to keep track of how many stitches you've done. So I won't go as slow for this one. I'm going to actually speed it up, and when I land on this marker I'll slow down the camera. And now I'm going to work in that 6th stitch and put my 2 single crochets. And now for the rest of the row, 1 single crochet in the final 6 stitches. Again, I'm going to speed up the camera. 5, and pull out that marker, and a single crochet in the 6th. And now we're finished row 5, and we have 18 stitches around. You can see the start of the nose and the front of the face here. Looking pretty cute, so let's add our marker. So row 6 to 8 is 1 single crochet in each one of those 18 stitches. So I'm actually going to leave you on your own. Just remember, when you're working in a stitch, you don't go back into the same one twice, otherwise you'll increase the row, because every time you put 2 single crochets into a stitch, you're increasing the row. So when you're done this row, you can do a stitch count. Just pull out your last one so you don't lose it, and then you'll be counting those V's all the way around, and you should always have 18 between now and row 8. So you can pause the video now, and we'll meet back here at the end of row 8, and I'll show you how to count the rows too. Welcome back. I just finished row 8, and I'm going to show you how to count the rows. So if you've lost track of how many rows you've done, you can count them simply by counting the rings here in the head. And you start down here in row 1, that loop, that first loop that we made, and always count behind your marker. So there's row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm at the end of row 8. Now we're going to start decreasing the round. We're going to start closing up the head. And we do that by crocheting stitches together, and I'm going to walk you through this whole row. So row 9 is 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and then we're going to crochet 2 stitches together. Then we're going to repeat that, 1 single crochet and then 2 together all the way around. When you land on the marker, you should be crocheting 2 stitches together. And there's 2 different ways that you can decrease the round, and I'm going to show you both ways. So let's do the first way. 1 single crochet in the first, and by first I mean the first stitch after the hook. There was my 1 single crochet. Now I'm going to crochet 2 together, and I'm going to go through that first one, pull the yarn through, leave that loop on my hook, go through the second stitch, pull the yarn through. Now I have 3 loops. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and I've just crocheted 2 stitches together. I've turned 2 stitches into 1. Now that method works great for me, and will work great for many of you as well. Some of you might start seeing some gaps or bumps in their work as they're decreasing. If you have that problem, I'll show you how to get rid of that. So we're going to repeat the sequence, 1 single crochet in the first, and now we're going to do an invisible decrease, and we're working in the front loops only for this. So when you look at your stitch, the front loop is the one closest to you. We're going to be working in both those front loops. We're going to go through that first one. We're not going to yarn over. We're going to dip down and go underneath the next front loop. So we just did 2 stitches there. We're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2. We have 2 loops remaining. Yarn over and pull through those last 2. And that was an invisible decrease. That's a great method if you start to see any problems with decreasing. If you don't see any problems, keep doing the single crochet 2 together. So 1 single crochet in the first, and then single crochet 2 together. I love that method, so easy. If you start to see problems, then you'll do the invisible decrease. And now repeat that sequence, 1 single crochet and 2 together. See how much quicker that one is. So if you don't see any problems with that decrease, then I would suggest keep using that single crochet decrease. If you start to see problems or gaps, then go through the front loops only. And there we go. We reduced this row by 6 stitches. So now we're down to 12 stitches around. We're going to stop, and we're going to stuff the majority of the head. You don't have to stick all of it in there, just enough to fill up most of the head, because we're going to stuff some more in after the next row. And I need a little bit of a stuffing stick. So I just want to get some stuffing into that tip of that nose. And that's all I'm going to put in there for now, because I don't want to be pulling stuffing through my stitches when I go through the next round. Whoops, I got to add my marker. So row 10, we're going to decrease the round again. We're going to put 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then crochet 2 together. This one, push the stuffing down and out of the way, and I'm just going to squeeze the back of the head together. One single crochet in the next 2, And now crochet 2 together. And repeat that sequence. 1 single crochet in the next 2. And now 2 together. And last time, 1 single crochet in the next 2. And 2 together is going to land in that marker, so I'll pull it out and crochet 2 stitches together. And that's the end of row 10, and now we have 9 stitches around. We can finish off. We're going to leave a tail for sewing up that gap. So break free. Now we're going to pull that yarn tail through this loop. We're going to get the loop down to about here, and then we're going to pull tight. We need to stuff some more into the head, but before we do that, we're going to weave in and out of the stitches. So take your yarn tail, bend it over, and then push the bend through your yarn needle. Makes it easier for threading. Now we're going to weave in and out of the remaining front loops only. So that's the loop closest to you. So in and out, those front loops only. All the way around to where you started. Before we pull on that to close the gap, let's stuff the head some more. And you will need your stuffing stick. If you don't have a stuffing stick, then use the back end of a pencil. That works great. Okay, I'm just going to use my stuffing stick to get the stuffing all around in the sides. Now I can close this, pull on the yarn tail. I'm just going to bring this yarn tail through and down into the neck area. Move it over just a little bit, right there. Pull it through and pull until you feel that's a nice shape back here. And now I can knot off right here. So I'm going to wrap around a stitch post. I'm going to go through that loop, and then I'm going to pull this tight. Now that won't let go, and it's knotted off. Now I'm going to hide this yarn tail, so I'm going to bring it through and out anywhere else through a stitch hole, pull on it, and I'm just going to pull on it slightly and cut, and then it springs back into the body or the head. Before we continue on with the rest of the pattern, let's make the ears, and we're going to use the same color as the head, and the ear is actually just a loop with 6 single crochets. Now for this loop, I prefer this method of getting the magic ring, the one I showed you in the beginning, because the ring stays closed. You don't have to worry about it loosening up at all. So I'm going to do the same method that I showed you in the beginning to get this loop. So again, I'm not going to go as slow as I did the first time, because you can also rewind the video and review it if you need to. I'm going to take the shorter yarn tail and wrap it around these 2 fingers twice. Hold that between my pinky and my thumb and make my slip knot. And the starting yarn tail is going to be long enough to be sewn into the head. And now I'm going to put 6 single crochets into this ring. And again, I'm going to go fast. There, I've just closed up my ring, and that's all there is to that. Now I'm going to break free, leaving a tail for sewing. I'm going to pull that through that loop, get it down to about here, and then pull tight. And there's my ears are done. And you want to make sure that you pull up the starting yarn tail, pull it so it closes up any gap in the center. So if you use that other method of magic ring that I've shown here on YouTube, this has a tendency to loosen up. So if that's the case, so here's the ring I just made using that method that I show you in the other video, and if you want to get this to stop from loosening up, then you'll have to join across with a slip stitch. So just pull on that starting yarn tail till that is closed up, Then go into the first stitch, pull the yarn through, and then pull it through that loop on your hook. Don't yarn over, just pull through. And now you would finish off, leave a tail for sewing, pull that yarn tail through that loop and pull tight. You can cut free from the starting yarn tail, and this is only for that other method. For the method I just used on these two, you need to leave the starting yarn tail where it is. So if you use this one, then you'll just have that one yarn tail to be sewing into the head when we're all ready to start sewing the head together. Alright guys, now we're going to add the nose and the eyes, and then we're going to sew those ears into place. So let's do that. We're going to grab some black yarn. So first of all, we're going to determine the top of the head, and again, that's where it raises up here. And this here, if it's looking a little bit wonky like it is for me, then I would reach in here and just straighten it out with your needle. I'm just going to straighten it out. There, that's better. Okay, so under here is the neck area, and that's the area that we're going to insert our yarn into. So I'm going to thread this black yarn, and I'm going to pull it from underneath the neck and out through the center hole of row 1. Pull it through. I'm going to leave this strand hanging down here, and I'm just going to simply wrap over this row. Okay, just wrapping over the top of that row 1, the top half. If you pull slowly, you can guide the yarn where you want it to go. So I'm going to pull very slowly through, and I can put it where I want it there and then pull. And I think that's actually almost done right there. On this guy here, I gave him too much of a nose, I think. A little bit, I wrapped too many times. So I just wanted a bit of a smaller nose for this guy. So I'll just do one more time. I'll come through here, and I'm going to guide that yarn where I want it to go. And I'm done. Now I'm going to bring my yarn needle back through the center hole of row 1 and out down here. Now if you were making a different kind of bear, actually let me bring this back up. If you were making a bear and you wanted a line down here, you can simply just wrap the yarn over, then you would bring your yarn needle through that stitch hole here and then out. And that will give you a line underneath the nose, like a lot of bears have. And you can make it as long or as short as you want. But that's not what I'm doing for this guy, so I'm going to pull that back out. And if you wanted to add a mouth, like this guy has, then we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. In between the 3rd and 4th row, this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to bring this down here. And on the side, I can wrap it over, and again you can make it as wide or as shorter as you want. And then I would just bring it through here. I don't want to add a mouth yet, so I'm just going to bring that out and down here. So there's some options for you. Now if you're adding eyes here, I just used yarn for little Winnie, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some stick pins. I'm going to mark off where I want the eyes to go, and I believe that's in between the 4th and 5th row. Yes. So I'm going to use pins. Now I couldn't find my pins anywhere, so I just kind of scrounged a couple up from my drawer, and they're different sizes. So just bear with me here. If you had two the same size, it would be much better. Anyway, there's my spots for the eyes. Now I know where I want to come up. Just watch the back here, because that is protruding back here and you could really hurt yourself. I've done that before and it's not fun. So I'm going to go back up and I'm going to come out where that first pin is. Bring the yarn through. And if you had a sharper needle, that would work probably a little bit better. I'm just going to wrap around a little bit of yarn, and I'm going to pull that through, and I'm going to pull gently. And that's pretty much done already, so I'm just going to bring this down and out where the other pin is. Pull it through. I had to turn the camera off and get my sharper needle because I was just messing up the other eye. So I'm going to bring it back through and then come up where I want the other eye to go. And the sharper needle is going to be so much easier to work with here. Pull it through. And now I'm going to wrap around a little bit of yarn. Pull that through. And then I'm going to bring it back down and out in the neck area. And I'm going to pull very gently. So I messed up a little bit on film, but you get the general idea of how to do it. And if you're not happy with how these look after you're all done, you can also use black acrylic paint and very carefully just dot in the areas that you want more of the black to show. Alright, now that these are done down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to knot them off. And like I said, this is going to be sewn to the body, so it doesn't matter that there's going to be a knot down here. So I brought the two yarn tails out, different stitch holes side by side, and now I'm going to knot these two together. I'll double knot it. You just have to make sure it's right underneath the neck area. So this is the part that's going to be sitting on top of the body. And now I'm going to thread these both, and I'm going to carry them away, out anywhere else away from that area. Pull them through, pull it slightly, and cut. You do want to pull slightly on this one, so they do spring back into the head. And if they don't spring back, because I didn't pull it all that time, you just reach in here and you swipe it with your yarn needle. Get rid of that black. We're sewing in the ears, and depending on which method of magic loop you used, you'll either have one yarn tail or two. If you have the two yarn tails, let's do the starting yarn tail first. That's the one coming out of the center of the bottom, and again, if there's any gap there, pull on it before you bring it in through the head, just to close up any gap. So we're going to go in between the 7th and 8th row, and we can count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So in between there, and I'm going to go behind the eyes, kind of in line with the eyes, and I'll bring the starting yarn tail right through here. There's going to be about 2 visible stitch holes between the ears, and I can come through the back of the head or straight down underneath, doesn't matter. Let's go underneath. Bring it through. Now I'm going to thread the other one. I'm not worried about the starting yarn tail right now, I'll just leave it hanging there. And there is a right and wrong side to the ears, and it doesn't matter which side you use as long as they match. So actually, I sewed the wrong side towards the nose. I wasn't even thinking about that. So now I want the ears to match. So this is the right side on the back, and both of them have the wrong side on the front. Okay, I've threaded the other yarn tail. Now I just need to bring it through. I'll come out through the back of the head, bring it through. I'll go back in the same stitch hole I just came out of, and I'll come up at the other corner. Okay, and I'm going to bring my yarn needle right through the corner of that ear on the bottom, so it has something to grab onto. Pull it through. And I'm going to go right in between that 7th and 8th row again, right here, and out through the back of the head. Pull it. And that's actually sewn in. So I did the middle one first, brought it down here, then I did the 2 corners. I can knot this off here or down here, it doesn't matter. I'll just knot it off here. I'll wrap around a stitch post, go through that loop and pull, and now I'll just carry this away, pull on it slightly and cut, and I'll do the same thing with the starting yarn tail. I will knot this off right here and then carry it away and cut it free. Alright my friends, that brings us to the end of this video. In the next video we're going to be making the body, and then we'll sew the bear together. So you can click that link that's popping up on your screen, and I'll meet you over there.